Okay, we're recording. So we're talking about value stream management again. So we talked about this a couple of maybe like almost 3-4 weeks now. I think 3 weeks ago, and I wanted to share some latest thinking that I've had with value stream mapping. Or I mean, it's called a lot of things: value stream mapping, value stream management, and so forth. Um, and so, if you look at the issue that I linked into the agenda, you'll have some ideas there. So I share my screen in particular. And the high level concept is still very similar, where you want to have some concept of time or cycle time. And even yesterday when I was talking to some other folks, maybe we don't even have to just use as a first release, we don't have to say cycle time, we just say whatever it is, whether we're whatever you were like if we're using stages or labels or whatever, we can just use that term directly. But what I wanted to emphasize is that what we talked about last time is that we talked a lot about using stages and and using figuring out what are the custom workflow stages, and then building value stream analytics on top of that, or value stream management. And then a different approach I wanted to consider is using events instead of using stages. And the reason I wanted to consider using events is that events are more flexible, I think, and it doesn't prevent us from using stages. So I'll quickly go over what my concept is here, and then maybe let's just have a more of a freer discussion. So, and my concept, I mean, I won't go over too conceptual. I'll just go over the really quick designs that I have, and then we'll go from there. So what I have here is that we do use labels now, and then so we'll go back and talk about that. Like I thought we said that we didn't want to use labels, but what I'm proposing here as a first iteration is that we do use labels and say like started and then go into complete. But we're not saying that these are stages necessarily, or we don't really care about that. Like there's no concept of an issue board here, notice. It's just you're configuring the fact that every time your issue has applied started, or every time your issue has applied complete, these are two events. And then find the time between them, because you can know the timestamps of those events. And then that is the time that we care about. And then you can take the average and so on and so forth. And then once you have that, because it's events, then you can add multiple events, right? So you have the started event, the complete event. Then you can have additional label events. And then once you have that, then you can have the times in between them. You can have the times from this one to this one, and so on and so forth. So you can do some additional fancy things. And then once you have that, then you can add additional events. So it doesn't even have to be label events anymore, right? It could be an event that you care about, that you tell GitLab that an issue was closed or open, a merge request is associated with the issue, there's a pipeline. And then maybe if we invent stages, we can say that an issue entered a stage or exited a stage, and so on and so forth. So these are all events. And once you have events, then you can plot the times between the events. What's also interesting is that once you have events, then you can do something fancy like this, where you can say all the times that that an issue went into in review. What is the time there? When is all the time that an issue entered the complete event, or not entered, but was associated with the complete event. And then you can see from statistically how that spread is. And then more importantly, these events can be very generic. I said that it could be issue closed or issue open. So you can imagine that issue closed and issue open are also events here. And then you can see them in a scatter plot. Or another event could be pipeline kicked off, or yet another event which starts getting to users, which is interesting, is that a product manager commented on this issue, or a developer commented on the merge request, a reviewer or maintainer did that, a security person commented on something, or participated somehow, and we start tracking more and more of those events, and we let people analyze those events. And then finally, the concept of a board does come back, but it doesn't have to be tied closely to a board. But the concept is that once you have those events, then you can create a board or you can associate it with a board. So I'll stop there.
So Victor, what kinds of feedback are you looking for in this session?
What I'm looking for is idea of this is a good idea, a bad idea, especially because it's very different from a previous idea with stages. I don't think you were in that one meeting, Pedro, but in that one, I'll try to dig up those designs right now. And then to answer your question. But yeah, to answer your question, Pedro, that's what I'm saying. Looking for feedback on whether this is a good idea or bad idea.
I like the idea. And I mean, this is not very different or different at all from what we talked in the past, I think. With the labels and all of that, and then adding the other events that you said, that you showed, like an issue was open, a pipeline was triggered, etc. So yeah, this makes sense to me, and it seems like it's not only easy for anyone to get started if they have a really small project with a very simple value stream, but also it can be extended to many more complex cases of value streams. Yeah.
Pedro?
I'd like to ask a question, which is, what is the most important information that our users want to get from this value stream, and then which should be the events, the most important events to be able to get this information that the user wants?
So what we want to show the user that customers have been telling us, analysts have been telling us, and we think that it's important, is the end-to-end, or some notion of end-to-end, right? So that's sometimes it's not really well defined what end-to-end is, but at a high level, like when we talk with customers, we don't get into detail and say, like, you know, when what is your issue considered started, but we often at least start with saying that we want the total time that it took for, you know, development of a feature to get it pushed into production. So that is most important as a first level, some started to complete and some notion of that. And so, for example, with psychoanalytics, we already give that notion, but it's not very customizable. And so this design purposely makes that more generic and says, you know, you can use labels if we decide this is a good first iteration, or we can go back to what we talked about 3 weeks ago and said, people are asking for custom workflows, right? And then the previous thinking and strategy, well, I mean, it's a strategy. Maybe after this call, we said we go back to this, but the meeting from last time, we said that we're going to invent custom workflows first, meaning that you have defined these workflow stages similar to Jira, and these are not labels. And then the issue enters these stages one by one, and you drag them in, whether an issue board or whether you're an issue, to go through these stages. And then once you have this, we build VSM on top of this. And then some of the designs that Annabelle started to work on is that VSM was really tied down to this. VSM assumes that you're using these stages. And so the concern I have with that approach is that then it's not flexible for other events to happen. And in particular, go ahead.
I just asked what I asked because you mentioned some events that seems to be important for the main goal of the user, knowing what is the time that it took from the creation of the issue or the starting of the development until it was in production. And then, like, the label started and completed makes sense. But you mentioned also events for, like, comments or for
right
things that could be like in a future iteration, maybe.
Yeah. And so those events, I'm saying that that this design using stages does not make it really easy to unlock those features that we potentially want to build. And so like people commenting, that might not seem very realistic, but even if we don't do that, if we do something more generic, just using stages, I already see some things that are troubling to me, and which is when you look at this model, it is a very waterfall model. It assumes that there's little collaboration happening. For example, at what we do at GitLab, for example, when you're in the review stage, is that only developers? Is there designers here? Or when you're in development, is there designers here? Or like, is there security stakeholders? Is there marketing people? Is there salespeople? So those things at GitLab are happening. I mean, we can always improve, but this design does not lend itself naturally, or I think it assumes that we have these stages, and stages are finite periods of time versus events, which are infinitesimal small periods of time. They're not periods of time, they're just points in time. And so if we do a point in time approach versus a period of time approach, then it's flexible because you can always measure period of time between any 2 points. But if you have a period of time and you assume that, then you always have to assume that there's some development stage, for example, that I'm pointing to. And therefore, you're always, the feature is always going to be, oh, let's measure the development time. That's all we care about, which is great in the beginning, but I'm arguing that it's dangerous because it ties us down in terms of design for future features. And so in the beginning, of course, what we're going to do is get to end-to-end time. And also what we talked about last time is once we know the end-to-end time, then we're going to say, okay, how about the development time? How about the in review time and the ready time? Like, can we improve that? And so this design where we implement this lends itself to that, which is great. But also the event approach also can do this as well. So why not do something that's more flexible?
One thing that I see when I think about value stream mapping with stages is that it's easy to identify queues, like times where you were just waiting for something to happen. How does it work with the value stream events?
So with events, it's not about waiting, or waiting is an abstraction above an event, right? Because with stages, you assume that an issue goes into, say, ready, and then there's and then nothing is actioned upon it, or it never goes into, or maybe it goes into development and it stays in work in progress, and you have to wait till somebody assigns it themselves to it, or you have to measure when somebody starts working on it. So you can do all those things, right? And then, but you already need to invent all these new attributes and metadata to measure waiting time that you just brought up. If you look at events, that's actually, I would argue, fairly straightforward, because you can create an event that says, enter this stage, and then you have another event that says first person, took an action on that issue, and then right away you've defined the waiting time. So what I'm arguing is not for the specific use cases. I'm arguing for this is a good baseline design, a good architecture, a good information architecture, a good engineering architecture. And then let's pick the specific use cases and maybe, create those first set of events to really address those first use cases. And I argue the first set of use cases should be calculating end-to-end time, right? Here, end-to-end time. But what's after that? Is it waiting time, like you just said, Walmar? Or is it going to be individual stage time? Or is it going to be like what I said earlier about measuring when, like the scatter plot, something like this? So it's not clear to me what those are. Or maybe we should invent stages right now. That I'm not saying this is a bad idea right now. So this is one of the purposes of this meeting. We could be saying that to instead of using labels, which we can do right now, right, to quantify these things, we could have still invent stages right away, but we still use events under the hood to calculate value stream mapping. We say that there's an event that enters this stage and maybe exits it. Maybe you don't need to exit. I don't know. but we make sure when we event value stream mapping, it's not based on stage, but it's based on a concept of events, so that we're flexible and we can apply other events in the future. Somebody, so feel free to speak if you haven't already spoken.
Just one other thing to add is that I shared a link on the chat about the way GoCD uses value stream mapping, and have like pretty documented things. So it's maybe worth looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Walmir, it's really interesting because that's similar to how we display our pipelines. I don't know the exact term.
Yeah, our pipelines, our CI/CD pipelines.
Yeah, our CI/CD pipelines. When you view the detail, this is more or less how we show them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a CI/CD tool as well.
So Pedro, they are complementary. They are not opposite. So if I said opposite, then you can watch the video to see what I said.
Yeah, maybe I misunderstood, and the way that you were saying it, it sounded like they were opposites. But correct me if I'm wrong. But now I understand what you are looking for is to understand which approach we should do first. Is that more it?
Right. Or? Well, I want to have some. I don't know if confirmation, but like confirmation from the team here. I see everybody's experts here to say like the underlying support system events make sense. Number one, and then if that makes sense, then what should we do? Should we do custom workflows and keep arguing about them shouldn't be based on labels and first class citizen stages? Or should we do labels because we have labels already, or should we do something else? Because we can do this and we're still not solving custom workflows in a very nice way, right? So with key value labels or scope labels that they're called now, our issue boards won't be as annoying anymore, and people can move them through the stages and they'll be mutually exclusive so they can advance them on the issue. So that is a net improvement. So if we keep on going down that route, I can imagine a future where we keep kicking the can down the road and we never do first class stages. But if we say like, no, we still need first class stages now, and we should do it now and also build VSM as using that as a first class system, then let's do that. So go ahead, Pedro.
So even without the key value labels, or I think they're going to be called Sculpt labels,
yep.
right?
Yep.
I was not remembering the other label name.
Labels,
that
key
was
labels, yeah.
Yeah. So even without that, today with what have built, it's possible to have the workflow because you drag and drop issues across the lists in a board, exactly. And they switch automatically, right? They're swapped, and you don't need to add one and remove the other.
Right. What scope labels, the benefit is that what customers were complaining about is that if you're not on the board and you want to edit, yeah. So that was the only comment, which is sort of tangential, but it's somewhat related because you could argue that scope labels has improved. It's lessening the pain. So no, that is a clear argument. It's lessening the pain that first class custom workflow stages is supposed to solve. Right.
Yes. No, right? I understand, and we agree on that. So my question now is, what use cases would custom workflows solve? Would it be an intelligent, smart way of switching stages in the workflow, or would it just be a way to define? No, this is the first, second, third, and fourth step of the workflow.
It would be, so it wouldn't do the latter because a first iteration wouldn't have it. And you can also impose an order on scoped labels. So they're neutral from that perspective. Like both of them can enforce an ordering. But the benefit of doing first class stages is just that we're not using labels. I think that's the clear benefit, right? We're de-overloading labels, if that's a word. Like we're subtracting that pain. where that pain still exists right now. So it's not, it's an improvement for that, for doing custom workflow stages. So I'm of the opinion that we can continue to push this aside because we can see how custom scope labels work for folks, and if that is indeed improving the problem or lessening the problem for the workflow use case, but we don't have to slow down value stream mapping or management, or whatever we're calling it, because we can use label events right away. And so we can start this work and have folks define things like labels here, which is already a feature, a great improvement. But if we ever need to go back and say a new event based on first-class workflow stages, we're not blocking that. That is still always possible.
And you can do the other way around as well, right?
You can do the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
what I'm not understanding.
The downside with doing this approach is that we can't do VSM right away, right? Because we have to build the stage support first. Whereas this approach, we can literally do it next iteration.
So
Yes.
Victor, oh, go ahead, Pedro. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with Victor and just leave a question about, okay, so if we can ideally do these so is the problem that we can't do these at the same time, and you're looking to find which one we should do?
It's not a
first?
problem. It's a consideration. It's a trade-off about, like priority and timelines and whatnot. So yeah, that's how.
Because we don't have the resources to do it, or
no, I don't look at it as a resourcing problem. I look at it as a, like, we get it sooner or later, that trade-off. So I'm not saying that we have to. I'm leaning toward that way, but I want this to be an open discussion to say that, it's a terrible experience to do it with labels. And if I'm convinced, I will argue for that with other folks in GitLab.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
So it seems to me that you are more inclined to do the value stream. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just
please, yeah,
trying to understand.
Yeah.
What you're thinking. So maybe you're more inclined to do value stream with the labels first, because hopefully that can solve a lot of the use cases for custom workflows, and a lot of customers and people that would initially want custom workflows are now less annoyed and less proponents for custom workflows, and we don't have to do them.
To be clear, plus I'm arguing custom workflows can already be addressed now with scoped labels, or it can be improved there. And so my driving interest in this discussion is to iterate on value stream management, to have it as a feature, to show to the world we're in the game, right? So there's some value there, right? Beyond like the basic product usage and adoption, is to show to the world, like, we're taking value stream management. Like, there's only so much we can say, like, for, I don't know, like a year now, then we have all these issues and like product marketing materials. But like the moment we can say on a blog post we have it, and the moment we can tell customers we have it and show them this is how it's used, that opens up a whole new door of other possibilities. And that's really GitLab's secret sauce. It might not be other companies' secret sauce, but it's our secret sauce. So I'm indexing on that as well. But if we have to wait like one iteration, we've waited like a month, like a year already. So I could be convinced the other way as well. Like we should do stages first, like first class stages, and then build VSM on top of that.
In my opinion,
go on.
No, please go.
So 2 weeks ago or a month ago, Victor, I would have argued for stages, because I think the overloading of labels is confusing, and I think it's a problem that we're going to pay for sometime downstream. However, in the spirit, and I've been watching this issue and tracking it, I'm in favor of the approach of focusing on events and continuing to leverage labels so we can get velocity and feedback. The faster we can get something forward out and into customers' hands to play with, and the faster we can get feedback, we win. And if somewhere downstream we say, gosh, we really should create a first class object at the top called stages where we can have some of these rules applied to them, if we can't do it to labels and we have to do it later on, fine. We will have learned so much along the way. So if this was a voting exercise, I would be 100% behind going down the path you're proposing and iterating as quickly as we can to get feedback around data. Yes, we're going to have to there's going to be some challenges as we go, but I'm confident we can solve them.
Yeah, you said more or less what I would say before. Like, I think as soon as we are able to get some feedback, better.
I have a question though. Is this VSM and all the stuff actually based on the Sculpt labels? So like like we see here, they started in the complete labels in the design. Are these actually supposed to be Sculpt labels instead? Or it doesn't?
They don't have to be. I mean, we could have, given this design, we could have done it before Sculpt labels. But it's just the fact that this design is something new, and I didn't think about it before.
Well, why I'm asking that actually is because like then we kind of integrate a little bit with the stages stuff, right? Because these Sculpt labels are sort of supposed to emulate the stages in a way, because then you have them mutually exclusive. Then you cannot have like started and complete label on the same issue at the same time or something like that. So then.
Yep, I agree. Yep, it's a benefit. It's related. I don't think it's. I wouldn't say it's related from a comparison. Like it's not better or worse versus like the other strategy, but it's definitely related. I agree with that.
Okay.
Pedro, Annabelle.
Well, and I think
go ahead, John.
The other thing about scoped labels, though, is they serve a different function as well. I mean, on one hand, they could play the role of being, defining these steps in the value stream, but they could also play another role of being a custom field as being true, false, or, size, small, medium, large. I think but then again, this plays to the idea that we're overloading these, which is okay, I think. I mean, if you can get your head around it, I think it's okay. We just have to teach people how they work.
Yeah. Also, I guess from the UI perspective, maybe we should start thinking about kind of differentiating a little bit between them in the UI. We would have, I guess, I'm just throwing it from top of my mind, like we'd probably have a different page for configuring them. I'm not sure. And this way would kind of separate them a little bit from the normal labels.
I think our UI is going to have to educate people when they create them. I think we're going to have a fair amount of just education built into the UI to teach people what they do and the power of them. We'll have to think about that.
We already have some initial thoughts on that, Alexandru. So we have this, which I really like, and then we have like we're considering where to put these. So that's definitely on the table.
Because, like, again, what I'm thinking about is then I guess with this, we'll definitely overload labels more if we're going to move this path, and then having the ability to separate them from, like, separate labels from Sculpt labels, and being able then to add some rules or something else on top of the Sculpt labels. So if you are able to separate them visually in the UI, people will perceive them as different things. So that overloading will be less of an impact, in my opinion. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but that's how I kind of perceive it. If you kind of show them as different things, then people will perceive them as different things, and they have slightly different functions. Although you can definitely use them as normal labels as well.
Yep, that's totally true. Pedro, I can definitely answer your question in the chat, but I know there are other folks that wanted to talk. So, any other questions? No. Okay. So I'll answer this.
I do have a quick question. Sorry.
Please, Annabelle. Yeah. No,
so what I was going to say earlier was I like your idea of event tracking, because we seem to be able to get quite a few things for free. We're already timestamping all these things. I also like that it is sort of automated. You don't have to manually drag things around like you would with a Jira style custom workflow to a certain extent. I have a question though about the, like in your example, you have completed and started as just regular labels. I'm trying to think, is this creating like a brand new type of label, or is this just going to show up in the regular labels list? Like you're on an issue, you can add complete to the labels list.
Yeah. So
and
it's
it'll start showing up on the VSM like that.
exactly. So to me, these are just regular labels. So this is, and then so if you look, let me go through this design a little bit further. So you go into this view, like I think it should be a group view, a group scoping, and then you create a object. For lack of a better term, I just named it dashboard. And the reason for this is I'm thinking about the GitLab use case. So if you do this for the maybe a first iteration, maybe it won't even be this. But like for the GitLab use case, we don't care about the entire GitLab.org, GitLab-org for say a particular team or even a particular department for that matter. So similar to boards, you need to have an object and you need to further scope it, right? So maybe it's a milestone, maybe it's labels or whatever. So you have some scoping that says narrow the population of issues that you care about and associate it with that object. And then that is your VSM object for your team, for your department, for you as a director that you care about, whatever it is. And then from there, you make additional configuration, which is, again, similar to lists in a board. And then you say, for the first iteration, it's going to be started like the one event and the starting event and the ending event. And then give me the time between the start and end, and I'll show you that time there. So that's how this object would behave.
But there's nothing stopping you from adding end to an issue, and then it'll show up here on the graph, even though it didn't go through any other.
What do you mean by end?
Well, just as a regular label, I'm trying to wrap my head around like if someone just added complete because.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, so you're saying that like that would be a bad experience because you get bad data type of thing.
Yeah,
right.
Because
yeah.
with workflow stages, you can't just add a stage like you can.
Exactly. So, yeah. So to me, that is not like something that the platform doesn't. So what I'm proposing is a platform, or it's a baseline using events, and then so you can build on top of that. So I would agree. You're totally right. With stages, then you won't get those data errors. But even for stages, for example, what if issues are moving around from stage to stage? So then that data is not really technically correct because then there's rework and other things, right? So you still have to iterate on top of GitLab to get numbers and data that make sense for the user, making certain assumptions that the user is well behaving and the issues are well behaving, so on and so forth. So that with stages, I would argue what you get is less of those problems right away versus a label like you pointed out here.
And we talked a little bit about scoped labels, but is there a reason not to only use scope labels for this, like creating your scope as VSM and then?
I think we could do that. Like I created this like before I was really thinking. No, I created this after scope labels, but I don't know. I was thinking to leave it more flexible because I'm thinking of a future where, when did this issue get logged as a bug, right? So we can have a VSM world where, like my scatter plot, which not too many people are excited about. We can log something that says like, logging a bug, like when did that happen, and then you can have some view for that. I think as a first step, if we wanted to constrain it, I would have no problem with that because it's better to constrain it at the beginning than later. So if we wanted to say that you can only choose scope labels to start off with, or maybe choose a given set so that you get this view sort of automatically, I think that could be an interesting solution as a first MVC as well. So I wouldn't be against that. That's interesting. John, did you want to say something?
I want to say two things, actually.
You can say three.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, so I'm thinking about this, and first thing that kind of blew my brain as I was thinking about the sequencing, we've talked about enforced workflow where there's a start and stop. Like you have here, started, in review, in UAT, and complete. So you could establish an organization could say, a customer could say, for all of my projects, they're going to go step 1, 2, 3, 4. which is cool. But when we were talking about events, I thought about this from an enforcement perspective. There's really 3 different ways you could have enforcement or imposition of the order of an organization wanting to have a certain value stream flow. One is they could say, do it however you want. Do it, whatever makes sense, do it. Your projects, you figure it out. You guys are smart, figure it out. And then they could learn from that. 2, you could have a rule of a more rigid, structured organization like financial services or others that are going to impose here's the order we want you to follow. And I think the third scenario we could end up with is a scenario where the organization says, hey, these are the 5 activities you have to do. You guys figure out the order and the sequence you do them in, and we'll learn from following along. So I think there's 3 different ways that we could approach solving that. So that was the first thing. The second thing I think is more important. We've got to get on our radar and make sure we're addressing here. And we're going to this will make it even more important, is that we've heard from customers they want to have the ability to imply group templates or group structures on their projects so that they have the same structure, the same labels in a repeatable way, in a consistent way, so that when I create a new project, it shows up in the same way. That's going to be, as we go down this path, we're going to make that capability even more important. And I don't know where it is in our backlog, but the ability to say in my group, in my set of projects, I want them all to look more or less the same with the same labels and the same structure in place. I think that's going to be something we're going to have to look at prioritizing as we go forward.
Yeah, I agree, John. I haven't given much thought to where this object lives. Does it make sense it's a group, and does it make sense that it's standalone? I was sort of, for half a year, really convinced that it makes sense associated with a board and that there's tight integration, or it is part of the board itself. Right now, I'm saying it's just sort of hanging around. So I think that's relevant to what you said, because if it's hanging around as I have right now, it's a little bit easier to have that inheritance or subgrouping thing. And with events, what's really great is that you can have this at the group level, and then you can, at the project level, inherit it, especially if these are group labels or events. We didn't even talk about like events scoping. So I think that's all relevant. But again, with events, I think it's all a lot more flexible than stages, because events
Absolutely.
are just
totally with you.
Just points in time in the database, and so it's really easy to query them. So I'm excited about that approach.
I'm with you, and mentally I've moved on.
Okay. So I'll answer Pedro's question. This is a great question. I think this really comes down to how we think about these features in terms of a couple of things. So I'll start here. And we have these things called maturity models, which is somewhat arbitrary.
So, sorry, Victor, for interrupting you.
Please.
But, just for the purpose of people that are watching on YouTube and later, my question is in terms of return on investment, user adoption, and winning new customers, if VSM is better than custom workflows, and if we have any data to back this up.
Great. Thanks, Pedro. It's here in my chat. I guess Zoom doesn't record the chat window, right? Or like you can't see the chat window, right? Can you? You cannot, right? Okay, yeah. So I don't know if that's a good design or bad design. Because you don't see exactly what I see, which is confusing.
Sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
Not a problem. So I wanted to step back and talk about maturity. I don't think I've actually brought it up with this group, which is I should have. But we have maturity models for GitLab, and they're based on product categories. So maybe I should, I don't know, sidestep or step somewhere else. So we have product categories, and we group our features into categories. So the plan stage has a number of categories, right? So it has project management, Kanban boards, time tracking, these 8 categories here. So 3 plus 3 here, and then plus 2 here. So there's 8 categories. And then don't worry about the group. We talked about that last time. So just think of them as within the plan stage, there's 8 flat categories. And we want to advance them in maturity. And there's a couple of reasons we're wanting to do this. We want to make management of this a little bit easier at a higher level, so there's visibility, and that we're advancing our product, and we can measure how we're improving GitLab from a breadth or depth perspective. So even though we operate as individual teams and stages, and we want to move quickly, and we make our own decisions, largely make our own decisions, we have to also make people aware of said decisions, and we have to work as, you know, entire GitLab together. We know we've identified things, and we've even have OKRs. And so the maturity model helps in this, even though it may seem arbitrary, but I see it as a means to an end. It's a means for structure and planning, because there's so much functionality in GitLab. You can't like line up every single feature in a spreadsheet and say, you know, we're going to do this versus this, and how does this impact hiring? How does this impact, you know, just telling our customers about our roadmap, and so on and so forth. So this is one way to serve that. So you can see that we've defined, again, somewhat arbitrary definitions of a product category being minimal, viable, complete, and lovable. And again, as you would guess, our goal is to push our product categories toward lovable. And if we have this type of abstraction and structure, we don't have to get into the features. We can have a conversation and say, you know, for the plan team, I want, you know, these categories into lovable by this state, and so on and so forth. So we've done exactly that. And so we have these very ambitious goals, and they're really, really ambitious, and they're predicated on not the current state of affairs. They're predicated on our hiring plan. So we're assuming that we're going to hire more folks, doing more things, make these team splits, and move quickly, and so on and so forth. So you can see from here, we are claiming that project management and Kanban boards and time tracking is already minimal. We're claiming that we want to be complete and then lovable by these states, and so on and so forth. Why this is relevant to your question, Pedro, is from an aspect of us wanting to do these things, it's relevant, and then we can step back to say, like, why do we even want to make these targets? So, but let me address this first. So value stream management, you can see it's its own category, and we're claiming that, or we're planning it to be minimal very soon. So this is yet maybe another reason we want to do it sooner rather than later. We just want to hit this target from a planning perspective, right? So this is yet another input to that. And then workflows, custom workflows, currently is within project management. And I'm fairly certain that I put that under complete, but I might have removed it because I might argue that custom workflows is, you know, going to be accomplished with scope labels. So I think I'm still deciding that, and sort of not have that tidied up really clearly, and I should do that. But to make a point here specifically, custom workflows falls under project management. It's already in project management as a category. It's already quite advanced, whereas value stream management is non-existent, and it's not even minimal. And so therefore, we want to do this. And then from the perspective of you know, customer feedback, and do we want this, how important this is informing that, right? This maturity model is supposed to inform it. So we see a huge opportunity with value stream management. It's a new area. We've been emphasizing breadth inside GitLab, and this is an example of that, where this is a huge new category that we want to play into. We participated in Forrester last year, and we haven't even moved an inch. And so this is the reason we're pushing for value stream management. And then custom workflows is one of those things that customers have always asked for. Like, it's one of those, like, probably 3-year issues, right? And it's something that we've been making incremental improvements toward. For example, the issue board itself is one, and then now scope labels is one. So we're moving toward that direction. So it's important for existing customers, and then value stream management is important for future customers and existing customers, and it's more strategic because it's something that doesn't exist yet. And so the return there is higher from a more riskier perspective, because we're going to be opening new avenues of sales, for example, new customers that are interested in this thing, and higher levels of this will be an ultimate feature, right? So higher tiers and so on and so forth. So that all feeds into, and custom workflows, I think I put in a premium. So that all feeds into why it seems that, I don't know if you feel that way, but I'm trying to communicate that VSM is more urgent than, say, custom workflows is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for explaining. Yeah, I was already aware of the maturity model, and so what you're saying is that the the priorities that are defined here are also come not only from what you see in the industry, but also talking with customers and from internal issue tracker, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's all driving. Yeah, this is supposed to reflect. This is supposed to like be a snapshot and a reflection, not a snapshot, an ongoing update of our roadmap, right? So it is our roadmap, right? If you think about it, like a roadmap is the Gantt chart, but like if you're Sid or somebody else, like can you look at that, like, or we haven't invented the tools yet. We talked about that last week, right? We have to make a roadmap more usable, right? And so until we have that, this we're going to use this, which is interesting because we actually have. I've been starting to use epics to do this, so we can actually show this on our roadmap. So maybe I'll actually do that as an exercise. That'll be interesting. But this is a roadmap, and the roadmap should reflect our strategy, whether that's customer feedback, being strategic, and blah blah blah, and all those things.
Yeah. So I mean, that what I was asking is essentially what I was looking to see in the epic. Basically, what you're saying, and now I realize that maybe you have all of this information in your head and also a bit scattered in other places.
Right.
I would love to see that in the epic itself, like saying why we're doing this, like X number of customers have requested this.
Right.
We have Forrester that thinks that this will grow by X% in the next years. And for both custom workflows and value stream management, try to make it a bit more tangible, because today I think we're just kind of assuming, and in terms of assumptions, I think one of the assumptions that we're very sure about is what you just said. Value stream management is riskier because we still don't know what's going to happen. It's a new avenue for business, but it can also be a time sink, right? We can be building all of this and maybe we don't have that much adoption compared to if we build custom workflows.
It's not the first time we've done that at GitLab. Yeah. So
yeah. So it's a gamble for value stream management. Custom workflows a bit more. So basically, knowing this, I was just looking to see like customer data, who we've talked to, what they've said, what is the industry saying, to back up our strategy essentially. Because I'm not seeing that right now. Yeah.
Thanks, Pedro. I'm taking notes so that I can do that homework, so I'm not ignoring you. And I think what you covered, I think what's difficult, or not difficult, but there's a lot of dependencies with custom workflows here. So I think that's relevant to put all that together. Some of that information is there, Pedro. So maybe let me share that really quickly, and then I think what's definitely missing is the relationship to custom workflows. So let me share again. So some of that is here. I mean, most of it should be there. So that's a problem if it isn't. So, why does it go to this page? That's I don't know that. Okay. So if you go to here, a lot of that is written here, like the description, why we're doing this, analyst, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So a lot of that's here. I don't think I've done a good job of tying to custom workflows. I think that's actually pretty relevant here. So I will definitely update this, and I'll ping you on this. So you can read this as well. But we have this for every single thing, like a business case for it, which is we definitely want that, right?
Oh, right. Okay. I was missing that. Yeah, because I was looking at the other epic in the event description.
Yep.
And I didn't see an ancestor to that epic, so I thought this was the epic for value stream. Yeah.
No, that's a great. I mean, I'll take the blame for any of this issue management and coordination, but while I clean up that mess, everybody can feel free to go again to this product category page. Hopefully, you can navigate to this by now. But if you click on each category, if you care about other categories in outside GitLab, like product managers are responsible to essentially have a business case for every single category. So it's not just a feature. This is like just the general area. And a product category should be a product essentially, or that's the bar we're setting somewhere here. Searching for product is dumb. A single product, but it says somewhere here, maybe at one point. Here. Categories are high-level capabilities that may be a standalone product at another company, i.e. portfolio management. So that's the sort of working definition of how big a category should be. And therefore, it follows that, if you're a company making one product, or if you're a company making multiple products or whatever it may be, then you probably should have a really good business case for it and all the reasons for it. And so that is what each of these epics are purported to be providing from that information. And so you can read each of these, and then they're all templated, meaning like there's words or sections in each of these ones with hopefully some words. So please go ahead and read the ones that you care about, in particular value stream management, I think is the relevant here. And so I have written some things, especially with the analyst piece.
Specifically with value stream management, I see that the bottom 4 sections are a bit empty. Is that because
we haven't started it? Yeah, that's precisely it. Yeah.
So like we haven't talked with customers about it.
We have. I mean, but that's what it is. Like the top. These things are going to be these are issue, right? Like I didn't paste every single issue, but I linked to this one, but it's really the entire epic, right? So it's the entire design. It's the 3 or 4 epics. So maybe I should do that, Pedro. That's fair. But we're talking with customers, but it's not like issue boards where they have like 10 requests and what they want. These 10 specific features and these 10 specific improvements, right? So that's something different. Whereas value stream management is more general idea. So we have a lot of detail, right? And which not by me, but this whole team has generated a lot of detail. So I'll do a better job of documenting all that detail here in all these ones.
Yeah, I think if I understand what you're saying, it's like you're not going to list all of the issues there, and I'm not asking for the specific issues. I think you can want to see all of the issues, but just I want to have a sense of the what is the weight of this for customers, even if we don't have issues, because customers don't know what they want, right? And they can't create an issue saying I want this specifically or I want this improvement. I think having a summary of the discussions that you've been having with customers, it would be really important. And because again, they don't know what they want, and if you can translate that into something that we can then pair with the analyst landscape, with the competitive landscape,
right,
it will help understand.
I think that's a great point, Pedro. I don't know if this template is not serving that purpose, so maybe that's a problem, because
we get rid of the template. You can do something different here.
Exactly. Right? So that's an observation. It's not an excuse. It's an observation of the failure. It's an observation. Please.
One thing that I think could be a nice exercise that we could make would be to define like different industries and then examples of different value streams for these different industries, and then trying to identify which of the, maybe we could call them stages, which of the stages in the value stream are more valuable than others in the complete stream, and then in a way try and educate the customers in looking to the value stream and seeing which ones are more valuable than others, and then if they see that something that's not that valuable is taking too much time, educating them with like good practices that they could reduce the time in that specific stage or something like that. So this is something that we could maybe exercise with like real customers, like gathering some information with them.
Isn't value stream though very specific or custom for every customer or everyone? I mean, like I like the idea, but I'm not sure if that can be really generalized into.
But let's make an example. Like for software development, we have like stages in the value stream. Let's say UX and design. It's something that adds value, and it happens. It will happen in different for the development of different products, and the development itself also adds most of the value. And then there's like testing and things like that, which happens in all the or should happen in every could happen in every project that is doing software development, for instance. So I don't think it's so specific to specific customer. I don't know. I may be wrong.
Yeah, it is specific to a customer, but I think Walmart, it doesn't have to be. I think what you're suggesting is great because we can have either representative examples or whatever, and mention that for regulated industries, like as John was saying, that there's going to be more stages, or there's going to be a security review stage, or things like that, and note and write those things down. I think is what you're saying. So how we can represent that, I think, is relevant, so that in finance they always need a clear UAT stage or something like that, or this is what we've observed, or this is what customers are saying, that they always need this, and that will help the design. It's not that we're going to use them or specifically or predefine them, but that it will help drive the design and discussion. So I think there's definitely some value there. So yeah, I agree with that, and we can do work on that together. All right, I think this is good timing. So I think the summary is that folks like the events thing. I don't see a huge pushback to do custom stages right now or custom workflows. So I think that issue is already scheduled for doing the first label thing. So we'll just let the process run, and we'll let whoever works on it drive it from a UX perspective. And then I'll continue to add more background information as folks up here have suggested. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, we're just going to do it, and then we'll figure it out along the way, as we always do. Go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, just wanted to point out what I think Annabelle said, that potentially for the value stream with labels, maybe we can restrict initially to only do with the scoped labels first, instead of just being all of the different labels.
I like the idea as well.
Just an idea. Maybe we can discuss it later in the issues.
I'll leave a comment on that issue specifically, so that we don't lose that idea. I think that's a good idea. All right, I think I scheduled this for an hour, so I think we're done. Thank you, everybody, and I'll throw this up on YouTube as soon as I can. All right, bye now.